it's really important for us to consider, MaaS or mobility as a service, just to throw yet another acronym in there. Mobility as a service is, it's I suppose it's a concept that's not, it both is well defined, but it's also, mobility as a service can be multiple things to multiple different people. And we have the ability to influence a lot of these these MaaS strategies on the basis of, okay, so I need to understand where there is huge amounts of journeys descending on a particular area, because I need to solve that potentially with public transportation. Let's take Florida as a good example. There is pretty much one rail network that runs from north to south of Florida. Now, if you're going to position a stop, so let's say you're going to position a new rail network, it's a huge amount of infrastructure that's going in. And actually, where do we put the stops? Where do we understand where potentially ride sharing is a concept now? So, a lot of shuttle buses that run throughout the US. Again, you need to understand, how can I limit 15 individual journeys, with one potential shuttle? And again, these are the types of concepts we start to get into.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. Again, to bring the pandemic element into that as well, in terms of, who knows what the full impact of that would be, but Wejo's data over the course of years prior and the year of, you can start to understand the model of, well, people, as we can all imagine, reduce the usage of mobility as a service, because again, is that a safety aspect in that, in terms of people's comfortability to share it with other people? And what does that mean then in terms of, do people fall back into a mode of more travel one-to-one with a vehicle? What is the purpose of that trip? From, I think you talked about it, Matt, in some of your playthrough earlier, that we can understand the origin. I think it was yourself actually, Steph, understand the origin of where they came from. What time of day, what day have they travelled into downtown for a concert? Have they travelled down into a football game? Is it for work commute? We can start to provide all that kind of insight, and how that's very much different from subject to subject almost.
Yeah, I think
tackled. So
yeah, and I think being able to overlay this data with the likes of POI data to understand those trends, over multiple different locations, like I say, it gives another level of insight. Just thinking about one of our customers who's recently given us some feedback with regards to our data, again because of the freshness, is around the amount of new roads that they've identified through Wejo data. So a quote from the customer was, "We identified 30% more roads than we have done with previous data sources." Because as soon as that road opens, you have a connected vehicle driving down that road, it identifies it immediately. Again, just in terms of the insight that will generate, it's absolutely huge.
I think that's a good point again in itself, Steph, that, traditionally, like, mapping companies would need to send out a specific fleet through a specific area to try and find it. I guess Wejo's data being always active, where the vehicles go, we typically see the data, and, we can talk about our coverage as sort of 99.99% of interstate and 95% of the all US road network. You think about that as on Wejo's data set grows, the amount of vehicles that we have grow, you further sort of identifying those new locations quicker and quicker and quicker. That's both, I guess, a POI, and it's also a new roadway, isn't it, as well? So again, you can start to see how Wejo's data paints that more holistic picture with less infrastructure for the customer, I guess, isn't it, in some respect?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's one of the big things, again, that the Wejo data can support with is the scalability. I think you talked about this earlier on in the session, just in terms of how many different locations can be analysed at a reduced cost because of not having to implement a lot of infrastructure. So storing Wejo's data, in the cloud, as an example, and running analysis on it in that way can save an awful lot of time and money and effort, and also allow certain entities to make the right decisions very quickly.
Yeah, I suppose I would probably just close this out in a little bit of, I suppose, a lens to the future as well. Where do we see the real societal benefits of connected vehicles, not just connected vehicle data, but connected vehicles in general? There's a really good example I I always bring back to is around this vehicle to vehicle connectivity.
Yeah.
And it's, the example is, okay, I have a fleet of connected vehicles. I have a vehicle that's 200 yards up the road that hits black ice. It triggers ABS on the vehicle and the traction control kicks in. That then has the ability to transfer back into that fleet to a vehicle that's 200 yards back to say, you might want to avoid this particular area. This is the level of capability that connected vehicles really do open up. The vehicle to vehicle concept, vehicle to infrastructure, vehicle to everything. And
Yeah.
it just really does, it reduces the need for that physical infrastructure, for that outlay on huge amounts of monitoring of the roadways, because the vehicle itself, it is the infrastructure. Because of those sensors, it can tell the rest of the vehicles and it can tell the OEMs more information than all of the infrastructure could possibly do.
Yeah, I think you hit it well there, Matt, in terms of, you could see up to 1,000 sensors of varying elements on a vehicle itself. You think about that kind of the OEM's arms race to further enhance the safety of those vehicles and the sensor output from that, but also, the environmental kind of information that it's providing. And that's a really good point you made in sort of the V2X kind of element, the vehicle to everything in that area. And I think from doing that, again, look even further forward, you're starting to pave more and more of a way to the autonomous kind of vehicle route. You're talking about more of the kind of, there's the build-up of this communication between all these fleets of vehicles and what that could mean next. So again, another interesting thought point to see that this could lead into that down the road.